Good afternoon, everyone. Futures Brizio here, Monday afternoon, February 3rd, 2025, just about 4 o'clock New York time, excuse me. And just figured I would just do a quick market wrap and just take a look around at some of these Forex and futures markets and see what we got cooking. All right, so we'll jump right in here and we'll start on futures since I'm on these charts. So this is live cattle, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, live cattle. So I just playing around with market structure look with certain other assets, and I did trade cattle in the past. To be honest with you, there's no like mini or micro cattle. It's just basically the full futures contract. So you got to be very careful with this market because if you're wrong, it can really damage your account. Because there's big moves in this. Because like I said, this operates off of a full contract. There's no mini or micro version like there is with many other futures markets. So the price action is pretty good, but you have to, like I said, be careful. I'm probably not going to trade this on my personal account right now, but I do have a funded futures evaluation that I'm taking, and I might consider it for that because there's a little bit less risk in terms of my own money, but we'll see. Anyways, so. This is the 1 hour chart. This is the April contract. There is a February contract, I think, but it expires in a couple of weeks. And it looks like most of the volume is coming out of there and moving to April. So I just decided to use that. So we can go out to the 4 hour. We can very clearly see a structure level here out of the 4 hour where price had come up, pulled back into this area right here. I mean, if you want, you can probably consider this whole area, including this weird looking candle right here. So this is kind of our zone right here. And you can see price went up, made a new high, and has pulled way back. And then we kind of have an interim swing high on the 1 hour chart. We had this pull back and then price pushed lower off of there. So, from a market structure standpoint, of course, there's no trade right now. But from a 4 hour standpoint, as long as this area holds in here, then this is still in an uptrend. This is just a big pullback. If price manages to get down and blows through this structure area, basically gets outside this rectangle to the downside, then I would consider the downtrend to be in place. I do have a price alert set over here. It's essentially an area where if I wanted to look to take a short-term trade to the downside, which would be counter to the 4 hour trend, but I might consider it. But probably better off just waiting and letting this thing just ride out and see if we can get a push back to the upside. So what we'd want to see on the upside then, if price to go back up, is to basically see the market flow, the order flow to switch bullish again. Right now it's bearish. We have these pushes down, swing high, push down. So if at some point we'd want to see price start to come up, maybe pull back a little, and then put in a lower high and start going higher again. And obviously, if it comes up and takes out, this area in here, that's for sure a signal. But, we don't necessarily need to wait that long. We just need to see price switch to a more bullish order flow on the shorter time frame, the hourly chart, maybe even lower, down to the 15-minute chart or so, and look for that bullish price flow back to the upside again. And I just wanted to point out something. So on the 15-minute chart, we had this one candle right here. The price broke above this consolidation area, and this is a liquidity trap because you can see we had one candle push up, and then boom, went down, made a new low. So anybody sitting here waiting along these equal highs, these retail highs, basically 1, 2, 3 areas essentially, and they see this one candle form and close on the 15-minute, they're like, okay, great, the uptrend's continuing. They jump in long and boom, they're trapped and stopped out. Which is why, you got to be a little bit careful with these things on these real short time frames because they know that a lot of retail traders and day traders are watching the short time frames, and it's very easy to manipulate people with a candle like this one. And clearly, that's what this was. It was a liquidity sweep and a trap, right? Trapped breakout traders or people thinking that the uptrend's continuing right here with this little candle on the 15-minute chart, or certainly on a lower time frame too. And then boom, it snaps right back down, and all these traders are trapped, okay? Whereas if you go to, like, say, the 1-hour chart or even the 30-minute chart, you can clearly see that this just threw a wick above this zone, closed back down. And if I saw this, I'd be like, there's no way I'm taking that long, because this is liquidity sweep. This wick pops up here above this retail highs, settles and closes back inside the range underneath this red line, and then we had price move lower. Okay, so just be very careful with going down to too short of a time frame when you're looking for potential breakouts, whether it's a continuation trade or whether it's a reversal trade or anything like that, especially if there's previous highs, multiple touches on a level like this. That's going to be a prime area for a retail trap, for a liquidity sweep. And the shorter the time frame you go to, the more chance you're going to be sucked into that. So you can see here again on the 30-minute, the hourly chart, you would have been okay. But even getting down to the 20-minute, we saw a breakout. And certainly the 15-minute chart, we saw this failed breakout, or this fake out right here. Okay? So just be careful with that. So in the meantime, again, I'd probably want to see, price start to make higher highs, take out some sort of structure. There's no real obvious structure in here. This is really the big structure right now. Again, I don't necessarily know if you have to wait for price to come up and take out this high, although that would be pretty conservative and probably be a good bet, because we could easily see price, from where it is now, start to come back up again, and then come back into, say this area, and then continue the downtrend. And that would look like bullish order flow on a shorter time frame. But all it is a retracement. So, I would say on this 30-minute chart, 1-hour chart, I'd probably wait for price to come up, take out this previous liquidity sweep, because we've already had the pullback. And so a break and maybe even a retest of this high to get a close above this high would be enough for me to get back bullish. So that's how I read this chart. But again, if it ever does come down and take out this zone, this rectangular area down here to the downside, then I'd say that the uptrend's over. Okay, so on to natural gas. Again, here's our 4-hour chart. So notice on this, we if you want to use a trend line, I connected this high to this high, and then it looks like a potential breakout. We've broken the trend line here. Again, doesn't mean that it's going to go higher. Our structure high is back here. If this turns and comes back and starts going lower again, then this will become our new structure high. But right now I'm not sure. So this is still our structure high on the 4-hour chart. Okay, on the 1-hour chart, I have this little arrow right here. This is basically where I would assume that the downtrend is going to continue. So if price comes down, takes out this swing right here, it's probably going to continue lower and at least fill in this gap. And this was a gap left on a lot of charts yesterday when the markets reopened as a result of the tariffs that President Trump has announced. That's caused a lot of gaps on a lot of different charts. Not all of them, but a lot of these energy and forex pairs and financial indices and things like that. So we'll see. So if and I also have a price alert here because there is a lot of headroom between here and this current valid swing point. So I might consider, kind of like with cattle, where I might consider short positions. On here, I would consider short-term long positions, at least back to this area up here. So I do have a price alert set, which is basically like we've already had the pullback. So if price comes up, takes out this high, I would consider the long, although it would be a pretty short-term trade. I'd be looking to exit it by the time it gets up to this zone, but it would be a good short-term trade anyways. And then we'll see what happens. I do think, however, that this gap is going to have to get filled at some point. So I'm not overly excited to go long because we could see, a big move lower to take out and fill in this gap, but there's no guarantee and there's nothing to say that a gap has to be filled right away. I mean, it could come all the way up here, react, and then come all the way back down, or it could come through here and then at some future point come back down and fill this gap. But it will fill this gap at some point. So I'm not overly caught up in this, but if it does start to go lower and I get a signal to go short, then my target would probably be, back down here at the gap fill. And then see after that what it does. Okay, so on to the DAX. So the DAX also has a gap here. Again, same reason. So we go out to the 4 hour. You can see it opened and came right down into this zone right here perfectly and made 2 attempts to break through and failed and started going higher. I actually did take a long off of this last night. I got out of it this morning right about in here. I left a couple of points on the table, but it looked like it was really having, I was hoping I could hold it right to close the gap, and it may very well do that, but you can see for the last 12 hours, it really hasn't done anything. And you can see, we've got all of this. So if it does start to move higher again, I would expect that's going to come up and at least fill in this gap before it does anything else. But again, we did respect this swing point on the 4 hour chart. So again, as long as this area holds, then the trend's still up. So we could come up and fill this gap and then just keep going. Maybe we get a reaction, it comes down and then goes up. But I do expect that this probably will fill the gap sooner rather than later. It may just very slowly, chug its way up here and fill the gap, and then we'll see. So again, if I was looking for longs here, I'd want to see, I would look for a target to fill this gap, and then that's probably be about it temporarily. But listen, you don't have to do anything, right? You can just sit and let this gap fill in, just let this thing play out, let it fill the gap and then roll and go back down, or let it fill the gap, bounce around and then go up and start and resume the larger uptrend, and then that's fine. But these gaps can be really, difficult areas on the chart to trade, potentially dangerous, because you don't know what price is going to do once it hits these gap areas. So it will fill them in, but the question is what happens after that. So I probably will just wait and see on DAX and just let that gap get filled, and then see what happens after that point. All right, so copper is a lot like natural gas, only there's no gap on the copper chart, which is kind of nice. But on the other hand, the copper chart, so we have this low was put in, so this is still a valid swing high right here. But you can see we're much closer to this than we are on natural gas. Here's the 4 hour chart. We did break the trend line, so we've got this area between the trend line and this structure area to look at. I'm not really interested in any longs because it's very close to this area, although price could come up, make another run up towards this line until we break and get a close on, again, say on an hourly chart or maybe a 30-minute chart above this zone right here. I'm not interested in taking any longs, but I'm not going to take a short until we kind of break structure again. And to see the structure, you got to really drill down. Here's the 15-minute chart. This is where I've got this arrow drawn. This is kind of like the major structure point to me on a short time frame. This is basically right where it hits the trend line. This is the trend line on the higher time frame. So if we can get below this structure, then that probably would confirm the resumption of the downtrend. But we're in an interesting place right now where we've had very bullish price action back to the upside. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if this represents a move back towards the upside. And we get up here, we'll have a reaction, some selling take place around this area where it is now, or maybe up to here. Maybe we throw a wick through here, come back down, maybe retest the trend line again, and then we go up. So again, this is kind of a nowhere place right now. I'm just going to let this one play out. So the bottom line is in all these markets, you know, cattle and natural gas could have some short-term trades coming here, but DAX, I'm not interested as long as we are holding this gap open on the chart. And copper, depending which way it goes, you know, we could see a trade set up over the next couple of days, depending which way it goes and what it decides it wants to do. But right now it's kind of in this in-between zone between a structure swing high and a trend line break. This area in between here can be a little difficult. So, and, you know, unless you're scalping it on a short time frame, which I'm not doing. So, all right. So that's my look at copper. A little bit of a wait and see on that, but could be something developing here pretty soon, though. All right. So on to Forex really briefly. I've scaled back my Forex. I'm down to basically about 4 pairs. It's just too much, even on the higher time frames, for me to constantly monitor multiple pairs and then look at futures too. So this is just for now what I'm sticking with. So dollar yen. So we do still have this structure high on the daily chart and the weekly chart. It's very clear to see this. All of this does look pretty corrective to me to the downside here on the daily chart. So, you know, net, I would say I'm probably looking for long continuations, eventually continuation of the uptrend. We did have some bullish price action coming off these lows right here. We've pulled back, and then we came down here. We rejected off of this area on this pullback. This could just be, you know, potentially lower high being a higher low being put in, and then price going up, and we'll see if this follow through. If we get this follow through, then, you know, we should see a continuation of the uptrend at minimum back to these highs up here. But there still is quite a bit of room to the downside on the higher time frames. So we can't rule out the fact that we might see price just, you know, continue to trade down back towards this rectangle box. So I'm not sold on it going long here, but we don't really have any evidence of anything right now. You know, it's a little unclear. So we'll see. But again, I do think there's downside potential. If this does move lower, we've got a lot of real estate between where price is now and this zone down here, which would represent, you know, a major swing point. So we'll see what happens with that. Swiss yen is basically the same thing. Although we don't have as much room to the downside if you look at this low, but we do have another one down here. But, you know, again, but the difference with Swiss yen is that on the weekly chart, we're kind of moving inside this consolidating triangle pattern, which is I'm not really a fan of. So on the lower time frame, say the 1 hour, if we can come up, and we did fill in the gap. Again, this was the Sunday gap. It did come up, fill it in, went down, made a new low, and then we quickly bought in off this low. So if price now comes back up, takes out this swing, then certainly we're going to go higher. But as long as price remains below here, and we still keep with this bearish order flow, then I would still be looking for short positions. But we did have a lot of buying off this area, so you know we'll see what happens. Whether we continue with the bearish order flow or not. And if we go way down like a 15-minute chart, again, we had this bullish action out of that low, came down here. So the question is this the higher low that's been put in and now we're going to go higher? Or is this just, you know, push down, retracement, and then we'll shoot lower from here? There obviously is a lot of buying taking place right in here and right in here, and then some bullish price action pulling out of there. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if you wanted to, you actually could say, you know, if we get a push back above these highs, then we have bullish price action back towards this area. So you don't even necessarily have to wait for price to get through this box to go higher. You could look at shorter term swings back up to here if this holds back to this area up here. So again, it kind of depends on your time horizon and what you're looking for. So, okay, so on to the dollar Swiss. So again, we had this reaction down inside of this zone right here, where price came down, rejected off of here. We have come back up and tagged this high, and now pulling back off the high. We have this gap right here that it has now filled, and on the shorter time frame, we've got this zone right here that formed before the gap was made. And here's the gap fill, and then price is kind of shot back up. So dollar Swiss is, again, another one that's a little bit questionable. On the weekly chart, we now have multiple touches here on this area. So, we'll see what happens on this one. If price can remain, and I'm not really a big fan of this zone. I'm going to take this off, actually. On the weekly chart, the zone is technically back here. This is technically our zone right here. And we have had all these touches on here. So, we'll see. If we get a push back through here, through this zone, then I think we'll go lower back towards here, right? So we have this zone on the shorter time frame. We could, pop and then come all the way back down through here on the longer time frame back into this area, okay? And again, on the hourly chart, it would be this line doesn't look right on the shorter time frame, but you get the point. It's basically trading back into this zone here if we can get through this area here. So basically a push back through here on this zone that's showing on the hourly chart through here. That's this little box right here. We could potentially get a move back towards these lows, okay, after we put in this double top up here. All right, so we'll see what happens. Again, anywhere around these gap areas can be really troublesome, so just be careful trading around these gaps. Even after they've been filled, there's still a question about which way the market wants to go. Is the gap going to be filled, in this case to the downside, and price goes up? Or is the gap going to be filled? We have a little dead cat bounce, but it just keeps going down anyways. So just be careful, guys, on all these charts that have gaps, even if they've been filled. Let the market kind of get its legs again and figure out which way it really wants to go, and then, trade accordingly. And then lastly, the pound USD, which of course is just basically the turning the dollar Swiss upside down. We had this gap here. You can see it like on the hourly chart. Okay, to the downside, it came up and filled it. Okay, so the question is now, are we going to roll over and keep going down, or are we going to hold this area and go up? It's probably going to do whatever the opposite of what the dollar Swiss does. We do have a structure area sitting, up here on the daily chart, 4-hour chart. You can see this structure area right here. Was this the retest of the structure area right here, and we're just going to keep going down after this gap fill? We'll have to see if we can get some bearish order flow back below here. That's what I have this line for. If price can continue down, I'm sure we probably will see a retest of this area down here. It's just a question whether it holds and keeps going up, or whether we break right through here. But any break below here on this 15-minute chart, then I do think we certainly will go lower and re-challenge these lows here that we can see. All right. So again, another chart with gaps, and a little bit makes analysis a little tougher, because again, even if the gap gets filled, you don't really know 100%, what price is going to do after that. Does that area hold? Does it just fill the gap and reverse and move away from the gap? Price in this case runs back up, fills it, and then rolls over and goes down. Or does the gap get filled and then we just chop around a little bit, but then that trend just continues in the direction of the gap fill? So just be very cautious with these gaps. until, like I said before, the market kind of gets its footing a little bit, and you get a better feeling for where it wants to go after that. All right, guys, so I'm going to leave it there. I hope everybody has a great rest of the afternoon. A very choppy, uncertain Monday coming out of a tariff weekend, and it doesn't surprise me that we have a lot of uncertainty here in a lot of these markets. We're going to have to just sit and wait and see what happens. So, all right, so trade cautiously here until we kind of shake all this stuff out, and we'll see what happens. But we could have some good opportunities setting up. So, all right, guys, make sure you smash that like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel. Leave questions and comments below, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, thanks.